Hello, everybody. Welcome to our online meetup of Moscow legal hackers devoted to biohacking, transhumanism, and its implications to society. While we see that people are still in the queue and joining our room, let us quickly know in the chat that you can hear us, see me, hear me, and the presenters. Just a quick plus that technically everything is okay. I see thumbs up from Asena, thank you. Hear you and see you perfectly. All good. Great. You may wish for the beginning, just show your camera that the speakers and we, the hosts, my name is Alex Stolarski and I'm co-hosting this with Holger Chaiger, that we can see you a little bit. And then when we switch to the presentations, I think it will make sense to shut off the cameras so that we have enough internet. Thank you for all those. Let us know where you come from. This is an international event. Usually, hello. Hi, Alina, great to see you. Thomas, Anfisa, fantastic. I think we wait another 2-3 minutes until people are dialing in. Let us know where you're from. Usually we do the Moscow Legal Hackers events in Russian, but since we have Christopher today here, we decided to broaden our audience, which is actually perfect timing in Zoom times or any other video platform that you prefer. Poland, Istanbul. Let us know where you're from. It's great that we have the chance to reach so many people from the Netherlands as well, who are interested in this really interesting, sophisticated topic that we're going to hear about today. Ukraine. That sounds good. I didn't see any from Russia yet. Kyrgyzstan, Central Asia, fantastic.
Germany.
Frankfurt, Russia, finally. Yeah. There we go, Belgium. That's great. So we can already say, although we're still 25, we have a truly international audience today, and it is great. We have 2 fantastic speakers and a really, really nice topic. You will hear some crazy stuff. That's what I can promise you.
And you will live longer after the webinar.
After that, it's all about, yeah. How can we hack the physical and the laws of nature, maybe to some extent, get a more healthier life and an extended life. Okay, it's 8:03 in Moscow PM, and I think we will start and others will join while we're talking. So again, hello from Moscow. It's our great pleasure to host this session today. As we said, first time we do it on an international level, and we have 2 fantastic speakers. So the first that I'm going to announce is Christopher Pataka. Christopher and I met a little bit more than a year ago in Cologne, I think it was, at the Future Lawyers Conference where we both spoke. But I was really fascinated by his keynote speech. And when we discussed within the Moscow Legal Hackers organization team that we want to host an event on biohacking, he was the first that came to my mind that I should address and ask to join us. Christopher is a futurist, an entrepreneur, an investor, and someone who is for a long time involved in the new media, as we call it. I think he grew up with that. Maybe you will tell a little bit also about yourself. He's the founder of a think tank called Ganaka and co-founder, I think, of the Hus Institute in Liechtenstein. So maybe you will share also a bit about that. Holger, our second speaker.
Yes, together with Christopher, we are very happy to have Violeta Trubina today. She's a practicing lawyer, founder and head of her own company, Familia, and she's a researcher as well at the Institute for Legislation and Comparative Law. And she teaches at the Higher School of Economics in Moscow. And basically, I had the pleasure this year to publish her book on organs and tissues as legal objects, and that was basically the starting point for this event, because we thought let's do an event on biohacking, because organs and tissue is probably a too bloody topic for a webinar, but biohacking should be interesting. Because we are legal hackers, and everybody wants to live a little bit longer. So let's dive into that. So we were happy to have Violetta talking today as well with Christopher.
Right. So I briefly showed already the book of Violetta. It's in Russian. And I forgot to mention that Christopher as well published a book this year, I think, right? This or last year. It's called Your Choice. Very interesting read. And we discussed before with the presenters that for the most interesting question, the one that really, you know, is food for thought, we will give away each one book to those who ask the most interesting questions. So stay tuned, stay until the end, and participate actively in the chat. And then later on, we can also switch on the microphone and you can take actively part in this discussion. I'm very happy that this evening is now happening. I was waiting for it. And Christopher, the floor is yours, and I'm very, very much looking forward to your presentation.
Well, Alex and Holger and Violetta and everybody else on the team, first of all, of course, thank you so very much for having invited me and also for having organized this in these times of change. Special times of change. Actually, the last 25 years of my, at least professional practice, have been times of change. And the think tank that you just mentioned, Alex Ganaka, has devoted itself and its practice to change and innovation culture. So this is what I do during daytime and sometimes night times as well. Consult and advise our clients on what it is that is coming from all sides, tackling their business models and how to adapt to that, how to prepare properly for what it is that is changing around them in their specific industries, or maybe as a disruptive force coming from an entirely different angle. Which is why I got invited to that conference that you mentioned in Cologne earlier, I guess, as well. The topic that you chose couldn't be more interesting, I think. And I'll start, which is, I guess, rhetorically, probably a clever move, with a big disappointment. Because I am myself not a biohacker, at least not in the sense of hacking other biological systems than my own. I will get to some details later, but the perspective that I will try to open up for you guys is a rather philosophical one, a perspective that is based on more than 1,000 interviews with decision makers in 55 countries that I've conducted myself over the last roughly 20 years. Why did I do that? Well, didn't really know what to do with my free time. Smiley. But honestly, I really want to understand what digital transformation means beyond replacing gear. I really get sick and tired of people telling me that they have transformed whatever business by replacing a paper notebook with an iPad Pro or whatever else tablet. What I truly believe is that we are living in the greatest times ever. We have literally superpowers at our personal hands that we can use on a daily basis, almost for nothing. And we are changing the world. We are changing the ways we live, we work, we run relationships. And this session is the living proof of it. For almost no cost, we come together from various countries and we exchange based on an internet connection about a very interesting and evolving topic that goes way beyond our own biographies and points at generations to come that might live a very different life to the ones that we live today. And from this point on, I'm going to share my screen so I can take you along a little journey of thoughts and theses, and maybe also some provocations. We have got only some little time on our hand, so I heartily encourage you to take notes and come up with your questions for follow-up discussion after this impulse, after Violetta's impulse, or maybe even after the whole session, because we're still there for you. You can hit me up on all social media channels, you can call me, you can write me emails, whatever. And way before this session actually got invented and invited and COVID came into our lives, I thought it's really time that we live up to what we call the 21st century. Basically still living with societal structures, with professional structures that derive from ideas that were born during the Industrial Revolution. Whether it is 9-to-5 jobs or individual mobility, whatever, there are many different lines. Many of these systems are way overdue for change, and we had the golden 20s in the last century, and now we have another 20s in the 21st century, starting with a global pandemic, the COVID bomb, as I refer to it sometimes, that brings great tragedy to many people's lives, but also it brings a lot of impact and power and energy for many of those systems to actually change, because there is no way around it. And a part of that is, as I already said before, looking beyond hardware, looking beyond the how-to instructions on various social media channels, on YouTube, on Telegram, on WhatsApp, whatever you want to call it, where we get a quick, like 5 bullet points list of how to fix stuff, how to set up an account, how to hack Google or how to hack Zoom, and look again into the why we do things the way we do them. And as Alex has invited me to talk quickly about myself, I already told you a lot. I co-founded or founded 13 companies within the last 20 years. I dropped out of college, economics, social science, media science, political science. So I'm quite the opposite maybe of Violetta's voice, and we can together create a great space of tension and constructive thoughts that we can then use to discuss. Myself, I've got an RFID chip between my left thumb and my left index finger that I use to open my door, my car, that I used to enter my fitness studio, my gym with, and that I could also use to transfer my business card to Alex when I meet him again, or one of you guys at a conference, or preferably at a bar in the future, without any connection, but the wireless NFC reader that you need for it. I also carry a North Sense additional sense, a human sense, in my breastplate that gives me magnetic orientation on this planet that we all inhabit. So whenever I turn towards north, which would be the opposite direction of the one that I currently use to face you guys, it would vibrate. Many people ask me, why the heck would you do that? And the answer is, because for research. It changes the way I memorize my life. It changes the way I perceive my days and nights, specific moments that can be super banal, going shopping, going to the playground with my kids, simply taking a walk. But all of a sudden I get reminded that I am part of a living system, a spaceship, Earth, that has a magnetic field, something that I usually and otherwise tend to forget using the high technology that we are using right now too. So that's internal hardware. External hardware, I won't go through the list. You can see it here, and many of you guys share a lot of these usages. Maybe some examples to highlight here. The Google Glasses, for instance, a piece of augmented technology that is almost long forgotten because it was a failure. But to me, this was a super important moment when I finally learned how to really use them, when I could take a photograph by blinking with my eye, and within that blink of a second, it was already uploaded in the cloud and it was shared with my family, and there was nothing else to do. I did not have to unlock anything. I did not have to focus on anything. I just used the blink of my eye to take a photo, and it was carried around the world within my peers network. That was something extraordinary, something that I think will come back to us in whatever form, whether it is Apple glasses, whether it is a Novartis lens that we might use as a temporary or a permanent implant in our eyes. But I think the vector that we are on here is already clear. The bunch of apps that we find on our so-called smartphones, you find on the right-hand side, the column, a lot of apps that you guys might recognize. The Apple Health app, Screen Time, Rescue Time, Gyroscope, Swarm, Spotify, Alexa, and so forth. And why have I listed this here? All of the stuff, hardware, external, internal apps, because I believe that when we talk about biohacking, when we talk about transhumanism, we should definitely think about these things instead of Terminator, Skynet, and some other science fiction stuff that Hollywood and others might have produced using millions, if not billions of euros or dollars or whatever currency you want to use. Strong images, but the actual change lies in the very supposedly boring practice within our daily lives. Everything in my life, almost everything, already gets measured. I'm a part of a way larger network of monitoring devices, of counting scales, of profiles, quite many of them that get added up to each other, that are traded with third parties that I don't even have a clue about who they are and what they charge. And I think this is the trajectory that is at least as interesting as printing a new heart somewhere in Tel Aviv or implanting some sort of new sensor below your skin. So this is my take on this whole subject. It's much more philosophical and an amateurish one in comparison with a traditional legal point of view, or maybe a traditional point of view of a software developer or a hardware engineer. But my hope and my expectation towards myself is that I can enrich the discussion that we have here and provide some context about the matter.
Christopher, very quickly, right.
Sorry for interrupting. Can you switch to full presentation mode, please? We can't see presentation.
Oh, then I am sharing the wrong screen. This is a pity. Let me try again, because it was in full presentation mode on my screen. But let me switch this. I hope that you see Rudy now in full screen. Do you?
No, not yet.
You don't? Okay, then we still have a technical problem. Fighting with the tech. Okay, again. Alex, tell me what you see.
I see only Christopher Pataka has started screen sharing, but we don't see the slides yet.
That is.
And I think we missed the first two slides then as well, because
we can repeat those. That's not really the problem, but I'm going to stop sharing again. The alternative is going to be that I send you the presentation, or I just draw the pictures on the webcam.
Now we see Rudy.
Now we see Rudy.
Okay.
Didn't expect that.
Great. So let me try again. This was the lists. I basically went through them. So this is not really something that you missed because I explained it, even including an AI-driven toothbrush and all the monitoring categories that I touched upon. What does this do to many people? It melts them down. And I couldn't resist to use this image. Maybe it's a bit out of context. I don't want to get political at all, but this was just too good not to use it in this presentation. Rudy melting down. Why did I use him? Because for quite a while, I've been thinking about this. Our identities as human beings seem to be... Huh. We've got the first question here, maybe. Something that I just heard and didn't quite understand. You please translate it for me. Otherwise, I get back to this slide. So in my belief, our human identity in general, and this applies to many people, and of course not all, is ripe for attack. So this means that our traditional idea of what makes up our identity is crumbling down, mainly due to the speed of adaptation that we see with new technology. And it's interesting. A lot of you guys, I'm sure, attend conferences, professional conferences where we talk a lot about future tech. We talk about AI, we talk about the blockchain, we talk about maybe biohacking, maybe emerging about transhumanism and stuff like that. And we tend to always look at the future when we do this. So we look at times like 2025, 2030, 2040, maybe 2050, which from a different point of view still is all very short-sighted still, but for us, looking from a very human experience of a biography, a personal biography, this all, of course, is an important future. It's probably still pretty far away. We don't know what we're going to do ourselves in 5 years from now, in 10 years from now, not even in 20. There comes the next pandemic. But the interesting 2 points on this slide are the circles. Usually we hear people talk about technical singularity when we talk about the increase of computing power, the merger between humans and machine. We think about an AI maybe taking over. I already pointed at Skynet, this science fiction vision of an all-knowing institution like this AI that could change the course of history. What we are not doing is what maybe Rudy felt in this very moment when this photograph was taken, look in the back mirrors, where I see that we have already surpassed a moment of emotional singularity, where we lost it literally in the way that we do not know how to deal with these phenomena that we are discussing here. And this is why a lot of people react very negatively when you bring up subjects like biohacking or transhumanism, because they are full of fear. They are afraid that their conventional concepts of what makes up their identity, what makes up the identity of the group that they belong to, the society that they live in, might actually put in danger. And I think they are very true. They are very well feeling what is going on without having anyone telling them about what it is that is actually going on. And this is why I think that this discussion is so important. And that's also why I think we should talk a little bit more about this and why I wrote the book. Basically, this tells the whole story already. Governing systems also ripe for attack, because what do we make up our identities through? It's our jobs, as I said, it's our social systems, it's our territory and its limits and so forth. And we basically have godlike technology that meets medieval institutions and our very own Paleolithic emotions. And if you look to the second lines below each bullet point, you can see what the problem is. We have technology that accelerates faster than our control mechanisms can steer and as our instincts can guide us. So we have these two different lines of development, and the spread between them becomes bigger by the day, actually bigger by the minute. So when we talk about exponentialism, not only in terms of COVID, but in terms of computing power, in terms of the spread of connected devices, in terms of demographics. We look at developments that exceed our imagination by far. And we still rely on steering institutions that are way too slow to grab the real impact of all of these developments, which is why we might have to do this ourselves. So this is in the book, parts of it. And the main motivation of myself, I suppose this is also a moment for quite personal discussions, as far as I've understood Holger and Alex in the preparation. I said it already, my main interest isn't how to put a chip into one's hand, how to make that chip even more smart so you could put your bank account onto it, encrypt it, and become your own bank. There's a lot of people who can do that. But look at the why. Why do we do the things the way we do them? Why do we not let go of ideas that, as I said earlier, derive from the Industrial Revolution and exchange them for ideas that might be more appropriate to the 21st century? And I give you some ideas. I guess one of the most important matters that should be put on the global agenda across various cultures, various industries, various scientific disciplines is digital humanism. So how do we bring these two very different spheres together? What it means to be human and what technology is already doing for us and with us. Technology that, by the way, we invented. It did not fall from the sky, right? We developed it in labs, in companies, and we adapt it on a daily basis. And whenever we can see a commercial advantage or a political advantage, we just grab it and go. And the one thing that I want to focus on today is the third bullet point, the invitation to participate in the Internet of Beings. Because I think it's really time that we get across that line that usually was used to separate between people on the one hand, machines on the other, aka email, messengers, social networks on the one side, and the Internet of Things on the other. I think this is something that we should really get across and look at something new, which I haven't found a better description for than the Internet of Beings. And I think we're going to see a lot of different beings than just human beings in the very short-term future. What does this mean? Being human, fusing with our technology, transhumanism. Pacemakers, yes, I know, it's a boring example, but it makes people stay alive, and it is a piece of technology that we already wear inside us. We even steer it with a smartphone, so with a remote control. And yes, there are a lot of different legal questions and also technological questions, because you can obviously access that remote control. You can change probably the rhythm of someone's heart. You can maybe even stop it. So you could imagine a lot of interesting new plots for crime movies, terrorist attacks, whatever, but this is a given fact. Second one is hearing, cochlear implants. You can function normally because of that technology, but even more. Someone using this technology can mute the world with just one click, with just one touch. So other people pay a lot of money for noise reduction earphones or earplugs. With a cochlear implant, you can just mute the world, it becomes silent. And this obviously creates a very different experience for those people. They can maybe focus much more and so forth. I told you about the nose sense in my breast. The same company, which is called Cyborg Nest, which sits in London, the UK. They create another sense which increases the frequency bandwidth of our hearing. So we might very soon become able to hear sounds that usually only animals could have heard before, like dogs or birds. And you just have to think about new music and you see where this all can lead to. Bionic prosthetics, you're essentially a hybrid if you have them, if you use them. Think about all the discussions around the professional sports industry, the competitions. Is someone having an unfair advantage, an alpha, in comparison with the other sportsmen and women when they use something like this? Can we even know if they use something like this, if it's a chip or a nootropic that they have used that isn't on any list, that you can't even detect when you probe them? So there you can see how this whole subject explodes into various directions. So no, we are not with Blade Runner just yet, but we are clearly headed that way. So here you can see the conceptual sketch that we could use as a discussion like platform. Web 1.0, connected human beings, we've all been there. IoT, usually described as Web 4.0. I don't care who has invented it, but it's now being applied like in most advanced industries and countries. So machines getting hooked up to each other, increasing efficiency, speed, reducing cost. It's a huge business, but I think it's time, as I said before, that we look at what is next, and that is X.0, the Internet of Beings, where we include everything that makes this planet, flora, fauna, machines, everything that we find, everything that you can put a chip into, which, by the way, has a cost of almost zero, which is the best argument to put it into everything, because it adds a lot of information to that piece that formerly was a dead object and now becomes an integral part of that world that we live in, that we might call the internet. So 20 years ago, we logged into the internet. Today, we live on the internet. That is my thesis. The great question that goes towards lawyers, of course, but not exclusively, is who or what has the agency over all these entities, over all these objects, machines, and systems? In other words, who or what determines their conduct, their purpose, their ethical code? What sort of instinct are they given or given to learn? Especially if we look at things that are self-evolving. So if the learning process is also an integral part of the system that we created and it's self-learning, it's super important how we set it up, how we configure it, sending it out there into our world. Usually people that I meet, not only lawyers, when they think about this, they think from a human being's perspective. So would I put a chip into my hand? How much influence do I allow my smartphone to have over my life? How about mindfulness practices and so forth? But as important as that is, there's also a lot of new stuff on the playground. Artificial organs, avatars, sentient software, human-like robots, biomimetic robots, augmented animals, augmented plants. And I fully agree. We are not there yet at a point in time where we could say this is all equally distributed and we should just have a huge round table and speak to the plants and have the animals tell us their story. But as I said earlier, I think we should really now, and not in 5, 10, or 20 years' time, open our perspective and widen it so we can include all these different facts of beings into a probably new perspective that we could take up upon watching the world, analyzing the world, and finding new regulation for this world, because the challenges that we face beyond COVID, I think are worth it. Whether we talk about, as I said earlier, demographics, equal distribution of chances and resources, climate change or crisis, and of course the subject of our night here, transhumanism and the merger between humans and machines. I think we are already at a point where we must state that despite the fact that we still do a lot of this stupid stuff, there is no point in continuing human labor by mainly repeating manual labor, whatever that is, driving cabs, doing the cashier at a supermarket, accounting taxes at a desk. There is a growing number of jobs that can already be replaced by software, by machines, by robots, even in caring functions, especially there. and human empathy, which is one of the main arguments that are brought up by people that haven't really dealt with the subject before, can be replaced pretty well. I know this is provocative, but it needs to be, because the human face has roughly 21 different expressions. And if I ask all of you guys if you can make a list out of these 21 expressions, I bet most of you will fail to make it up to the full 100%, to the full 21. You maybe get to a 10, a 15, maybe a 20, but the 21 you won't reach. If you put that into a machine, into a software that runs a robot, no problem. 21 expressions, emotional expressions, they can read it. They can react to it, they never get tired, they never have a mood, and they get home and they are fresh as they were when they started their job in the morning. At the same time, we are turning our technology into decision-making code. Think about autonomous cars, self-driving vehicles, whatever kind they are, trucks, cars, cabins, I don't care. And they will carry the legal code that corresponds with the jurisdiction that they are currently being used in. And they're going to exchange with the other participants of that system. And again, the question is, who has written that code? What ethics does it carry? And how do we manage the system, not turning ourselves into like crazy bystanders, but actually making a benevolent system out of that, where we as humans can evolve into a new stage within our history. Well, we have to and can consider what we want to be indispensable for. So rather than defending an old idea against a technology that can't be beaten, despite all its failures, despite all its mistakes that it still has, the path is clear. It's going to outpace us. It's going to be much more effective, almost at no cost. So what are we going to make out of this? I think there is a point when we make the thesis that we are seeing a transition from Homo sapiens to software sapiens. And I quite like the tension that this thesis brings with itself, because we feel sometimes threatened, maybe endangered even as a species. But look at this. We are terrible at making judgments and decisions. We are all influenced by culture, race, language, and looks. We forget stuff. We are lazy. And this is why we are going to be eclipsed by our own creation, AI. And this is a matter in this discussion about transhumanism, because again, it's not just about making body modifications. It's about the concept of what it means to be human, what it means to live with all these other creatures or creations that we have invented. And we need to find ourselves a new role here. And I think this role will have a lot to do with play, not as just in gaming, esports, daddling around with Candy Crush or World of Warcraft or Call of Duty or whatever it is that you play, but play in a rather philosophical way, where we play around with concepts, where we play around with questions, where we play around with potential solutions to the great challenges that we face, in accordance and together with all these creations that we have put out there. Think about this question. What could define our identity when we look back, maybe from a point in time, let's say 2080, 2100, so in 80 years from now, in a way that we did it yesterday, when someone asked you, who are you? And most of us answered with the job that we actually do on a daily basis. So identity so strongly bound to the job that we conducted that now can be handed over to something else. Not for everyone, not overnight, but in a very short-term future, if not even yesterday. What is going to be the answer tomorrow? Maybe it has to do something with an art of play in a specific field. It could be legal. It could be something artistic. Maybe it could be something else. The question goes out to all of you there. What do we do with all this time when we don't have to work in a traditional way. Which leads us, of course, to the question, who am I? What am I? What do I want from my life? How much machine do I want to allow into my life? I think now, after 20, 30 years of digital transformation, and all of us having integrated at least the so-called smartphone into our lives, it is time to ask this question. And again, because I so much love this discussion, most people that you ask for some transhumanistic future, they come up with science fiction. Would they, would you, would I have ever expected that a hardware company like Apple, that a formerly unknown student startup going by the name of Facebook would have been able to create the potential to destroy democracy, to destroy the public discourse as it is still being taught at universities around the world, at least in democracies? Well, the fact is this so-called social network phenomenon was actually able to do exactly that. So this has already all happened. And I think this is why we need now to urge ourselves and to urge our friends and colleagues and partners, and especially our decision makers in politics, to take a look at this and not dismiss it as a budget question of how to distribute like tablets to students and pupils in the schools. Learning, teaching, taking care of someone, I think this is a very promising path in transhumanism. Taking care of something, taking care of the planet maybe. And there you go, play becomes a very wide term indeed. Inventing futures is not something that we should just leave up to others. I think it's something that we should take care of by ourselves and make use of these great inventions that we have come by already. We can see the results, for instance, of AI optimization in medicine, strongly outperforming human beings by far. So why shouldn't we go and do this together as transhumans? The question, therefore, is, as you can read it here, how are we going to play with software sapiens rather than fight it or separate from it? But how are we going to make use of this combined intelligence that we all of a sudden can find all around us at, as I said already, almost no cost? Even in our home office, we can rent that AI for just a fraction of a day, for a little to no sense, and make it work for us. What types of reality are we going to aspire to together? Let me finish with this. It's one of my favorite examples. Many of you guys have been to a zoo, and probably you liked a specific animal most, and you watched it, and you kind of felt soft and warm because you could kind of feel being part of nature. Maybe it made you very sad because these animals are kept in cages, but there's one cage that is almost for everyone super interesting, and it's the cage where they keep the apes. And there's a special ape, the mountain gorilla, 1,000 of it left roughly in 2 different countries in Africa, Central Africa. It's the mountain gorilla. And the interesting thing about this species is that there's one other species that solely defines whether the mountain gorilla as a species will continue to exist on this planet or not, simply by prioritizing its importance on a list of various things. And that species is, of course, us. It's us human beings. If we take away the fences, if we take away the protection for the mountain gorillas, they will be gone forever. They will be hunted down, they will just starve off because they can't sustain themselves any longer without our support. And because you guys are all so smart, you already know where this is headed and where I'm looking to. And this is, of course, a world where we become something like these mountain gorillas ourselves, where we are outrun by a species that is not all that different from us, and directly generated by us because we invented it, we wrote the code for it, but also vastly faster and more adept at intelligence tasks than us, will be our role and our position in relation to it. What will it be? Are we going to become the mountain gorilla to our own AI with our continued existence effectively in what we hope and trust to be the benevolent hands of that species? I know this is very provocative, but this is how I want to start this discussion. And before we do that, there's one last story that I want to share with you. And while I read it to you, you can look at this ancient temple in Delphi in Greece. And I ask you the following question. What would you expect that species, that transhumanistic AI-driven species, to do with us? It's a thought exercise that's well worth conducting. Imagine you have a place in a system that is extremely good at making sensible, humane, benevolent decisions about the planet, that one planet Earth that we all need. It has at its heart our own best interests, our human beings' best interests. Maybe it has at its heart, its software heart, the United Nations Human Rights Declaration or whatever. Because we have taught it thus. We programmed it therefore. We have programmed it and trained it to learn what is good for humans and what is not. And it, over a relatively short time, because it's so fast, it's got so much computing power, has become adept at making finely balanced decisions on our behalf. Yeah, there's so much data, there's so many signals to convey and to compute and to analyze. We can't do this, even not with the biggest research institution in the world, but the computer can do it. Maybe it's a quantum computer. And then it encounters a bunch of people who wantonly burn down rainforest, dump rubbish in the sea, and traffic other members of their own kind from one area of the globe to another to work as slaves. What would you expect this wise and intelligent and resoundingly fair system to do? This is the question that I want to leave you with. And yeah, we can skip this credential. It's an ethics professor from a university in Cologne. She's currently heading the European Ethics Commission. She has read the book as well, and she quite likes it. But I think I can skip that advertisement and just skip to this. For the ones of you who would like to come back to me and throw rotten tomatoes or share an interesting question with me or the group here, Alex, Holger, I give it back to you for the moment being.
Thank you so much, Christopher. This was really, yeah, thought-provoking to some extent. Really. Well, a lot of things going up in my mind right now, and I will try to structure a bit my thoughts. But I want to encourage everyone to participate in the discussion. So you may ask that if you want to show up, and then we unmute you, or as some people already make use of the chat. Christopher, maybe you also have a look at it. There are some questions already addressed to you. We have a research project from Mexico who is also in this topic. We have a specific question from Sinan Erkan to you specifically. Let me, while you read that, so you obviously allow a lot of machine into your life, what we heard. And the question that you pointed out, which has a lot of ethical, a lot of legal implications, and we certainly will speak in a bit also about that, but a rather personal question: how do you cope with that? I mean, there's a lot of information, right, that you share with these machines. How you make sure not to become the hostage of the technology that surrounds you? Because I understand this is also that worries you, right? Because we make use of that technology. We shop, we order something on Amazon. It's here the next day. We use all these apps. We use all these features and think it's great. And we can actually not imagine how it is without. Although you and me and Holger, we have been born in a time so my first mobile I got at the age of 18. And before that, I was living completely in the analog world, right? So how do you make sure that you do not become? How do you cope with that? What's your look at that? You're on mute. Maybe, Christopher, you're on mute. You need to unmute. Yes, no.
To put it short and simple, because time is short and I've already spoken too long, I embrace it. Because I think only when you kind of feel it, when you let it in, you can work with it. Because from a distance, talking about stuff that you haven't experienced, in this case, doesn't work. So we can't leave it to the very few who traditionally had been tasked with looking at the stuff super critically, because they take too long. Our current systems allow entities to bring all this into our world at light speed. It's spread in the millions and billions within weeks, maybe days. So we are overwhelmed and we melt down probably. So we need to change the game. We need to take a pause. And I've asked for this quite many times, and I do it in the book also. Instead, for instance, in these COVID times, instead of paying people as it's done in Germany for doing nothing with taxpayers' money, which in different circumstances you could also call a universal basic income, what we should and could do is send people into online universities and have them understand stuff, understand what is going on, understand what the functional principle of a so-called social media company is. Let me finish with this. When we met at that lawyers' conference, and admittedly there were 500 of the smartest lawyers in Germany that you can find and abroad, what we had to note is that a vast majority, 80% of those attendees didn't have the slightest clue about that working, the function mechanism of this so-called social network, Facebook. They perceived it as just another, let's say, online newspaper. They did not look through the surface, and they could not realize how destructive the mechanisms of negative news driven by advertising and optimized for media results actually work. So if those highly intelligent legal pioneers are at that stage, I think we can assume for the broad populations in most countries that they are also lagging behind maybe 10, 20, up to 30 years. Recent study in Switzerland showed that the public knowledge about technology and what it brings with change is roughly 30 years outdated. And this is something that truly worries me, yes, indeed. And I think we should change that. And we, as very flexible, mobile, privileged, affluent people, we can do that by embracing the stuff early and by sharing our experience just as we do it here and now, which is why I so much love this as an exchange and as a social experiment.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So questions are popping up. You see it, but we are a little bit tight on time. So what I suggest, and if you people attending, if you allow, we will switch now to Violetta, and we will catch up with these questions. I think right after that. Is that okay for everybody? Or Holger, what do you suggest we?
Yeah, I guess let's continue with Violetta and have then all the questions too, because maybe Violetta will cover some of the questions already, and we have plenty of time afterwards. So we have
I see as well that some people would like to go live, and that would be great.
Yeah, we just unmute everybody. That would probably be better than to do it via chat. Yeah.
Exactly. So during that time, maybe Christopher, you can also, those questions that are addressed to you, you can go through them and make your mind up. And Violetta, we're looking very much forward. Now, I mean, we already discussed there are a lot of legal implications as well, legal, ethical questions. Looking so much forward to hear your voice on that, your view. Thank you for being with us. And
well, I'm honored to take part in this international discussion. And actually, my topic will be focused more on biomedicine and biohacking, because actually I'm specializing in it. And actually, I would like to move forward some new trends of biohacking, and together with you figure out some ethical and legal challenges that are involved in this process. Well, actually, we shall start with saying that human enhancement is not something new. Actually, throughout the humanity history, people trying to enhance its physical and mental skills for thousands of years already, little by little moving forward in this direction. So all of us remembers, for example, some myth about Icarus and Prometheus trying to enhance their physical skills. And actually, if we are going back to 500 years, we will figure out that not much happening within the century. And today, every week we can hear some news about scientific or technology breakthrough. And actually, just imagine that just in 20th century, many scientific and technologies breakthrough had place, such as biotechnology, information technologies, humans and organs transplantations, blood transfusion. And actually, probably all this breakthrough may push us on the verge of enhancement revolution. And who knows, probably in 2 or 3 decades, we will find an option to enhance ourselves and change to some comic superheroes, for example. Actually, in my opinion, the most important science innovation is genomic sequencing and CRISPR, which is a brand new genome editing technology. And actually, the 2 scientists from USA, they got a Nobel Prize this year for this invention. And this technology opens a wide range of opportunities for healthcare and in the same time human enhancement. So the application of this technology very depends on legal and ethical frameworks that we're gonna build up.
Violetta, I think you also wanted to share your screen.
Yeah.
By the way, if you're already.
Yes, let's do this. Okay, great. So actually, today we are living in the world where some artificial retinas are implanted to give blind patients partial sights. The 3D bioprinters can print organs and tissues which can be inserted in the human body. The UK scientists have elaborated the synthetic blood substitutes. And all this already becomes the clinical practice. And all this stuff is happening even without Elon Musk involvement. So let's imagine what his breakthrough. So while others arguing, probably I have shared a wrong, yeah. Yes. So.
So we see the spiral, but the.
Okay. So while advocates and opponents discuss about the pros and cons on human enhancement, it became part of our life. And everybody says that the future is now, but nobody underlines that behind this future and all these innovations, we have a legal framework, which are also happening now. And actually, we shall use our chances to build up this legal and ethical frameworks for their applications. Actually, let's ask ourselves, do we really need these legal and ethical frameworks, or it's just something artificial? Actually, we do need, because if we go through unlimited application of this scientific breakthrough, including the genes modifications, actually we're gonna come to unpredicted consequences, which can threaten not only an individual as human being, but the whole humanity. Because actually, for the moment, we cannot predict what genetic changes will be inherited in the future. Actually, it was saying that historically, many scientific advances were done in a legal vacuum. And today we have quite a huge number of legal regulations and ethical guidelines, both on international level and on the level of each countries, which deals with biomedicine issues. But actually, modern innovations always uncover some weak points of it. Yeah, just let's say that our current legal framework in bioscience actually based on the core principles which were adopted by United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights as a reaction, as a consequence of Second World War. As you know, United Nations was established to reaffirm the faith in fundamental human rights and dignity of human being. And so the Universal Declaration was the first international document to recognize the human dignity and the main human rights.
One second, Violetta, are we still on the first screen, or do you already, because we only see the helix on the first screen of your presentation.
Do you see the articles of declarations?
No,
or no?
No, only the helix on the first slide.
Okay, just let me try to do it once again. That's really strange. Yeah, do you see it now?
Now we see it. Thank you.
Perfect. Yes, so actually the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was the first document to establish the main human rights and freedoms, and actually recognize the human dignity as a core principle. And this declaration was the central point on humanization of international law. Reacting to the innovations and scientific breakthrough, UN and other international institutions, they adopted more and more international documents which prevent the unhuman treatment, such as Declaration on Human Cloning Prohibition, Declaration on Human Genome and its Research. And actually, all these documents and the human dignity recognition was the greatest achievement of the last century. But actually, it was like 70 years ago. And so as we are living today in a world where you can print your organ in 3D bioprinting, or you can implant yourself a chip, or even undergo some genetic modification, actually that's quite obvious that all these provisions are not sufficient. So they are a bit out of date. And actually we are facing the challenges that we need to review the legal frameworks that we have now. Yes, so just let's go quick to current biomedicine legal framework key principles. So as I said, that human dignity protection and prohibition of any human or degrading treatment, it shall be prohibited. So here we can see some examples of this treatment. So involuntary experiments, cloning of human beings, and some eugenic practices. Another principle that in every science experiment or clinical trials, the human being interests and welfare shall always prevail over the interests of society or science. Free and informed consent is a mandatory condition and basis for any intervention into human integrity. It's worth saying that this conception is a mandatory condition for participants of a human being in medical research, or in genome research, or in transplantation, or in assisted reproductive technologies. So actually the free and informed consent is a guarantee of respect of human and autonomy and the human dignity. Another very important principle, which actually has really actual significance, is that the human body and its parts as such shall not give rise to financial gains. And based on this principle, today we have all the organ and tissue transplantations, except the blood transfusions, are done for unpaid basis. So you cannot generally buy your organ. That's only a gracious gift. Let's stop for a moment that this very important principle has its exceptions. For example, in Iran, that's the only country in the world who eliminate the shortage in kidneys because they have permitted the sale of kidneys. So, and actually you cannot just go to Iran and buy your kidney if you need, because this practice only reserved for Iran citizens, but still that's the only country in the world where you can buy your kidney, but still the government regulates the ethical and legal aspects of this transplantation. Let's move forward. Actually, another very important area of scientific breakthrough is genetic modification. As I said, 21st century is marked with two breakthrough innovations. First is genome sequence. So now we have sequenced the whole human genome, and actually we have the complete map of human genome, which faces the paradigm shift to personalized medicine. And second, that now we have found the very efficient mean for genome editing, which can be both applied for adults and for embryos. So here on the screen, we can see two types of genetic modification. First is somatic genetic modification, and the second is germline genetic modification. What's the difference? Somatic genetic modification is done on adult, yeah. So actually we use this type of modification to treat a disease. And for example, in 2016 in US, the first clinical trials on a human being was started to use this type of genetic modifications to treat the very rare type of cancer. Actually, now we can say that this type of genetic modification can be used as a treatment for other very dangerous diseases, such as Parkinson's diseases or even HIV. Coming forward to germline genetic modification, here we work with egg, sperm, and human embryo on a very early stage of development. And this type of genetic modifications we often call inheritable genetic modification. So it means that if you do these modifications to an embryo, his kids will get the same. Actually, that's as it is the very new area of legal and ethical framework. So there is no much rules around it. And basically in 2015, it was an international summit of international scientists dealing with genetic modifications, and they have figured out the most important challenges about germline editing, because actually that's the most dangerous and threatening area, because these changes can be inherited. So actually, as it is quite new technology, we don't have much knowledge about it. So we really need to make more clinical trials to get more information about it. Because on the modern level of science, the risk of off-target mutations are quite high. So it means that you're gonna edit one sequence of gen, but you cannot be sure that on the other on the other end of the chain there are no mutations at all. Second is that for the on our stage we cannot predict what harmful effect that genetic changes gonna give. Second, once the genetic modification is done, that's practically impossible to remove this genetic alteration. And actually, in my opinion, which is the most important risks about the genetic modification, and namely germline editing, because actually it can be used not only for therapeutic treatment, but for human enhancement, like and falling into eugenic practices. For example, if parents want to enhance his kid like brain capacities, or just choose his eye color or something like this, they can do it using genetic modifications. And actually we can say that eugenic practices are prohibited right now because it violates the human dignity as a unique creation. So actually, so here we have a phrase of Craig Quenta, that was one of the first scientists to sequence human genome, and he warns us, saying that actually here we have not enough knowledge to apply this embryonic genetic modification. So first, we need to get more knowledge to go through these clinical trials, and only then we shall build up new legal and ethical frameworks to apply these germline modifications. Okay, great. So actually another area of very important legal and ethical issues that we're going to discuss is assisted reproductive technologies. For the moment, we already have hacked the biological limits, age limits to have a child, because even in the last century, when this assisted reproductive technologies was developed, you can have a baby using a donor sperm or a donor egg or even a donor embryo as all. And even in some countries, the surrogacy as a mean of reproductive assisted technologies is also permitted. And so actually, in these circumstances, even if biologically you cannot have your own child, you can undergo these reproductive technologies and actually solve this problem. Here we have really important ethical challenges. First of all, the legal regime of the embryo. So, okay, we know that we create the embryo using eggs and sperm in vitro, yeah, so outside the human body. So, and for example, in accordance with Russian legislation, you can freeze it, you can donate it, you can even sell it and buy it, because actually there is no a ban in law that says that actually the monetary deals with embryos or reproductive tissues are banned. So actually, what's the legal regime of the human embryo? Others says that we shall protect the human embryo as a beginning of human life, and say that actually he has a right to life. And okay, so how can we treat the technologies of embryo reduction? Because, for example, if you implant at the same time 3 embryos and all of them start developing, and so we shall have the opportunity to reduce one of them, because like have triple pregnancy is quite tricky, yeah, and actually it can be dangerous for a mother. And in this case, if we say that human embryo is a humankind already, so even before the birth, so we will face the murder, actually, which is not the case. Another issue, what if let's imagine that an embryo was created using the sperm of one of the couple, and the partner has that. So how shall we treat it? For example, in United States of America, it is permitted. So you can inherit, for example, an embryo or a sperm sample, and even use it for reproductive purposes. While, for example, in Switzerland, it's completely prohibited under the constitution of the country, that you cannot use post-mortem reproductive tissues and embryos. Surrogacy, that's another thrilling challenge, because actually not in all countries the surrogacy is permitted. For example, in Russia, you can undergo the surrogacy, but only if you have medical conditions. So so you cannot carry yourself your kid. And actually, these conditions are set up in the legislation. But in other countries, you can go through surrogacy, for example, in case of one gender path, or that's actually the case in Thailand, in Canada, in some states of America, in South America, actually. but actually, that's the question of ethics. Also, we can ask ourselves: can surrogacy mother get paid for carrying a child? And actually, that's also very tricky. For example, in Russia, yes, you can, because legislation has not such a prohibition. But in many countries, like in Israel, for example, it can be only like free of charge. But of course, you can ask for health compensation, because actually we can say that it has some impact on surrogate mother health. So actually, all these questions need to be faced, need to be faced. And last topic that we're gonna discuss is longevity. Actually, taking into consideration the innovations breakthrough and healthcare, genetic modifications, robotics, nanotechnologies, etc., that became obvious that it's going to extend the human lifetime. And in this case, we shall think about how this lifetime extension gonna influence on our expectations, on our taste, and on our rights, so that we shall build up a legal framework that dealing with healthcare, insurance, retirement system, and inheritance, which completely differs from the one we have now. Because actually, if we can imagine that we're gonna live 2,000 or 3,000, 200 or 300 years, so the paradigm will be completely different. And actually, that's an open question, and I let you think about it. Thank you. I'm ready to answer your question, and I pass my word to Alex.
Thank you so much, Violetta. You actually finished with some biblical numbers. 200-300 years. There was a different time in history when people reached that age, but maybe we get there again. So thank you. First of all, thank you both for this really insightful talks. It's again thought-provoking. A lot of things remain, and I think must remain also unanswered. Yeah, because some of them are rather philosophical, some of them are rather ethical. We don't have the solution at hand, but I think it's very timely that we have this discussion and that we think about this, because the way we participate in this world, the way we participate as active citizens, as lawyers, as businessmen, as people who are part of society, I think it's very important to recall the importance of taking an active position and having a position actually on all these topics, and find our own, let's say, harmony on dealing with this technology, dealing with all the challenges that we face. And I would just like to open the discussion. We have still 30-40 minutes that we can join together. I see Christopher was already very active answering questions in the chat. I'm not sure everybody is, because I was focusing on your talk now, so I didn't have the chance to really read it. Holger, maybe you want to open the discussion, and then we take also someone I remember wanted to go live, so you can unmute yourself. I think Ilona in the background will make sure now that everybody can control the sound. And yeah, maybe Holger first, and then I would suggest we leave it to you to also take part.
Yeah, I'm not going to steal much time from the participants. I just wanted to open with a remark. If I go on Twitter or into the comment section of YouTube, then I realized that the augmented animals Christopher was talking about, they are already among us, so it's not in the distant future. One thing is what crossed my mind during both presentations. If you look, say, 15-20 years ago or back, then if somebody lost a limb, he was qualified as disabled. Now, when got an artificial limb, we see the sorted person as disabled. Now, if somebody gets an artificial limb, he has an advantage. Yeah? If you look at sports, the case with Oscar Pistorius, who nobody wanted from the with two human limbs, so to say, wanted to compete with him in a sporting event, and I see that will become also an issue in the workplace. If so, I see in the not so distant future vacancies arise that say people with say an artificial or bionic eye preferred for that position. So that's probably some issue we should think about how we could handle that. And what also crossed my mind during Violetta's presentation, that nobody, human organ or body part should be sold. If an artificial limb or bionic eye or whatever you can replace, would that become part of your body? And if you get a new so to say, you buy a new bionic eye, can you sell your old bionic eye on eBay? So that's there. I see millions of questions arising.
Shall I answer? Well, actually, in my opinion, even if you, for example, use the 3D bioprinted organ, before you implement it in your body, it is a thing in legal sense. So you can buy it, or you can donate it, or you can store it. So the legal regime of a thing without any exceptions. But once it is implemented in your body, it becomes part of your body, and actually and it is protected by the legal regime of personal integrity. So that's two different legal regime.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
In order to Christopher, I thank you very much first that you really just put it in words. But maybe since we want to, we recording this session and then put it on YouTube on our channel, I'm not sure that we will keep the comment section visible for everybody. So maybe in a few words, if you don't mind, summarize quickly. There was a repetitive question about the thing that you said. Okay, there's this technology, but behind that technology, there's a huge infrastructure which is physical, yeah. And who owns that? Who's the decision maker in the background? Who is in charge of that? And maybe just a quick sum up of what you already put in the chat, but maybe your take on that.
Sure. Actually, you chose that one question that I have not yet answered in writing in the chat section. So with even greater pleasure towards that. Again, I thought about it, I wrote about it, and I can really get enthusiastic about this. We all use on a daily basis now this very infrastructure that you refer to, satellites, glass fiber cables, data centers, software running on that. Yet, if you look at where our youngest, our kids, our children, our students are brought towards when they get invited to learn about the world, to join an expedition, they go to the police station, they go to the fire station, they maybe go and see a water plant. No one ever takes them to a data center. We don't even know that this stuff exists, or maybe we do know it exists, but we don't have the slightest idea of the dimension of this infrastructure, in my humble opinion. Maybe you guys all have, but certainly I myself and the people around me, they do not. And I think this would be a very tangible first step to take, to look at the actual stuff and realize with all the human senses that we have, what dimension we are actually facing. Because these data centers, their number, their size, their sophistication, their protection with heavy armor and a lot of weaponry in some cases, tells us a lot about the importance of this infrastructure. And you can also do a different test. You can ask yourself whether you know who, you asked the question, Alex, who actually owns the provider of your internet connection. I'm not talking about the brand that you use, whatever that is, but whether you know who truly owns that infrastructure that you use. I guess that most of you do not know this. And it might be interesting, maybe even important to find that out. It's a task that I have shared with the readers of my book to actually do as one of many tasks, actually. There's a bunch of 20. Because it will help us to grow up to the world that we live in. I mean, you want to know who you buy your water from. You want to know whether the electricity that you use is coming from renewable sources or not, and so forth. You want to know that your car is in checks and well serviced. So how about the data that you use? Is it being forged? Is it being filtered? Is it being traded? We should know. And asking questions isn't a bad start.
Amazing. Thank you. I think we had someone who wanted to go to open the microphone. So I'm looking for you in the chat, but maybe you can just do it. Yankee, I think it was. Yankee.
Hi.
Hi, we cannot.
Oh, I think, yes, I unblocked the thing. So, yeah, I'm sorry. Firstly, thank you all for the wonderful discussion. I actually forgot that it was this Tuesday and had to rush, and I somehow managed, and it was well worth it. Thank you. My question was that about unemployment, to be exact. I'll try to give an example about what the point I'm trying to make, because I haven't been able to put it into words and add it as a text. Let's imagine a cashier at a supermarket, and this person works a certain amount of hours each week and gets payment in exchange. And this person spends that money to gain an economic footprint. For example, the ad companies track that person's to give them ads, and they this person sees ads on his or her social media account. And one day, this person is out of business. He or she goes unemployed because some artificial intelligence will take over that job. And this person has no income right now because they don't work anymore, and so they aren't able to consume much. Their economic footprint goes down. As their economic footprint goes down, their political footprint goes down, because no one really has to care about what they say. They aren't subscribed to a trade union. They don't have much money to donate to politicians, so they're effectively silenced. And the question I'm trying to ask is, in a world filled with these people, would democracy be even an option? Like, I would like to ask this question to both to Mr. Pataka and Mrs. Trubina, if that's possible. Thank you.
Would you like to give it a
No, go ahead.
Well, first of all, thanks for that super smart question. I don't have a silver bullet to present, and yet I find the question so interesting as a thought experiment that I just want to share some spontaneous thoughts about this. First of all, and there's no logical, no final logical concept to this, but first of all, advertising as an industry, I regard as a rather destructive force for democracy, for instance, especially for the last 10 or 20 years, than an honorable industry that we should try to maintain as long as possible. My personal humble opinion, nothing else. But that's point number one. Number two, if a democracy makes it necessary for its citizens to be a donor to a political party, or even a member of a party or a union, a trade union, in my humble opinion, again, there's something deeply wrong with that democracy in the first place. Either there's one man and one woman and one whatever, one vote, and that is a democracy, or it's a deal. But that is not a democracy in my opinion. Third and maybe last thought, because once we step into this challenging moment where machines take over labor that was formerly conducted by human beings, the thinking and the groups following along with that thinking, of course, they part into fractions. And there's a large fraction of people who, as I said earlier, in a reflex, they defend what we have, this well-working system of wealth distribution and economy and so forth. And there's the other group that tries to come up with alternatives. And of course, the minutes left do not allow for an extended discourse about this, but maybe we get another chance. And you, of course, should go and create those chances and hook yourselves up to the next sessions. But look at two ideas. The first one is taxation of computing. So for the moment being, we tax human labor. And we had good reasons for that. What happened if we started to tax computing? So machines working on whatever base, could be computing units, could be hours, could be economic value, I don't know. Up to you to discuss. But that is a new income stream. A potential new income stream. Second one, old discussion, but not less interesting in my opinion, tax financial transactions, which interestingly enough are more and more conducted by machines. So even in that area where we have some of the smartest brains around, the main competitive advantage derives from using cutting-edge technology, the best encryption, the fastest transmission, the best computational algorithms, and so forth. So taxation of financial transactions, taxation of computing power or labor and or, plus maybe something super innovative in how to run a government, open government and governance to the commercial sphere as a service. So that would be GAAS, government as a service. And you find that already not in many, but in a few places. And I give you one example, and then I'll shush and give it to my colleague. Estonia. Estonia has an electronic citizenship since a couple of years for its own natural-born citizens, but since 2015 also for foreigners. And for $100, anyone around the globe per year can access the Estonian governance system, aka capital protection, legal protection of their entities that they set up in Estonia without ever stepping their feet onto Estonian physical territory. I know this leads too far, so this is why I stop at this point. But I think for that fraction of people who are trying to come up with new ideas of how to sustain also a society in social terms, there are some promising ideas and arguments and concepts already, not only in theory, but in practice. Experiments that have been conducted for years, results that we can count, that we can compare, and that prove us that it is A, the right time to have these discussions, and B, it would be too lazy to just point at some distant future, a foggy scientific future, and calm ourselves down by telling us that story that this is not relevant now and everything still works so fine. It does not. And this pandemic is going to go away someday, and then we can look at the remaining challenges again with a more clear sight. But with a group like this one tonight, assembling here in this Moscow Legal Hackers group powered by Schneider, again, kudos to you guys for setting this up. I think we can do this now, and we should do this more often, and we should push in our local spheres of influence to have more of these discussions and to go deeper and dive into the details and have all these beautiful minds that are together here right now, not only ask more questions, but really ideate and come up with practical solutions for their organizations, for their universities, for their neighborhoods, for their municipalities, and take the first step.
Thank you so much. So with Yankee, we have a serious candidate for this book, right, Christopher? I think you like that question a lot. And I remind you all that we're giving away these books of Violetta and Christopher. So please feel free to open the mic and to maybe not ask a question, maybe just share your view, which will be interesting as well for all of us. Violetta, would you like to add anything on that, or maybe pick up something from the chat where you want to share your view on that?
Yeah, actually, I would like to pick a question about the legal framework on regulation of biohacking in Russian Federation. Actually, that's a really good question, and the legal situation is more or less the same, not only in Russian Federation but worldwide, because actually biohacking is like quite new trend in our society. So, and we can see that the governments and agencies are choosing the wait and see approach. So actually they don't prohibit it. They do not really restrict it because actually in my opinion, for two main reasons. Because biohackers, that's the persons who experiment on themselves, and actually it can be like in very mild regime, like taking vitamins, etc., and more how to say by using genetic modifications, or plugging your body with some chips, etc. And actually, the first reason why we shall see what it's going to give, because if we go back to, for example, the history of Apple, we will remember that actually everything started in a garage. So in a personal laboratory, somebody can make an innovation that can that will have a potential of breakthrough, like in a global sense. And second, actually, as it is self-oriented technology, so actually the person can only harm himself for the moment. There are some natural, let's say, barriers. For example, you cannot easily buy some chemicals or some pathological agents, like biological weapons, etc. So because it is prohibited by law and you need a license to buy it. That's the first barrier. Second barrier, that of course you need equipment. And this equipment is not really easy to find, but actually as biohacking is developing as a social movement, they organize themselves in biohacking communities, and they exchange the experience. They set up their own rules and ethical guidelines, etc. They exchange the equipment, and so actually probably, we don't know, probably this movement will give us some revolutionary innovations. And actually, for the moment, we don't have like hard law regulating biohacking, except of genetic modifications, which is in some countries are directly prohibited by law. For example, it is completely prohibited in Germany and in Switzerland. In United States, for example, the genetic modifications on embryonic cells cannot be funded on the federal level, but if you have find some private phones and monies, go ahead. So there is no restrictions. But for example, in UK, which has really developed legislation in genetic modification, you can get a license and go ahead with genetic modifications. So that's the situation as it is now. And for me, the most efficacious way of regulation of biohacking is some ethical guidelines, so not mandatory, and probably some soft law, so saying that these biohacking communities can elaborate their own rules and follow them. So I think for the moment that will be enough. And of course, actually, that's a good point for Russian Federation. We really need to set up legislation on genetic modifications.
Thank you for that answer. There's another question to you. So Sinan, maybe you also put on your mic if you want and ask a question. So while you're doing this, maybe Christopher, another worry is, so we do all this technology and becomes smarter and smarter, and AI is evolving. So I read Alina's question as a sort of fear. So what happens if it outweighs us, if it becomes too smart? And I think there's this term that you have shown also on your slide, the technical singularity. So a moment of time in the close future, or maybe you can tell us when it happens, where technology becomes, well, it just outsmarts the human being, right? If I understood correctly. And what then? So how do we control that? What is our task today? Or is there something we can do? Or is this a given fact that we should just accept and start living with that and make ourselves comfortable in this reality?
So you want to start with this one?
Yes, maybe briefly, and then I give then Sinan, I see you're already connected. So after that we have another question for Violetta.
Okay, I again try to keep it short. I'm an informed reader, maybe, but I'm not spearheading the research globally on the technical singularity. And what my sources tell me is that until a while ago, the estimate for a potential year when we might actually see this was 2040. So in 20 years from now. And there are many variables that restrict, of course, this thesis and the concept itself, but we don't have time for this here. So 2040 is a number. Recently, so about a year ago, leading scientists corrected that assumption and predicted this for 2028. And if you ask me, I don't really care whether it's in 8 or 20 years, both is frighteningly close to today, taking into account at what quality and speed and level of differentiation we are discussing this in public, because we do not discuss it in public at all, in my opinion. And that's what we should do. Can we control it? I think inevitably not, because I regard this as a question of evolution. Can we prepare for this? Absolutely yes. I think we shouldn't prepare, we must prepare for this, because otherwise it could in fact get ugly. I ended my talk with this question, what you think such a system, a benevolent system, would do with the ones of us that do not apply to the rules. Imagine a system that we have forgotten to program in a benevolent way, following our ideas of what it means to live in a peaceful human society. Not a very nice image coming to my mind. And you can call me the crazy one, or you can look at the billions of dollars that are flowing into foundations and research labs that try to avoid exactly this situation and that do everything to prepare, while other prominent voices are blaming and shaming them for not knowing shit about the real issue and dealing with the wrong questions. But if you ask me, I'd rather like to be prepared. And I actually find a lot of pleasure in giving the thought a chance to make this a peaceful coexistence of smart species simultaneously on this planet. Wouldn't it be lovely to have more play partners instead of less? Currently, we're killing most of them. So how about a change here and adding some intelligent life on this planet that we can then collaborate with and work with on the solutions that we so desperately need. And now to your guest and our guest, and another super interesting question, I'm sure.
Sinan, please unmute yourself. Yeah.
Hello, we don't hear you well.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, could.
No, not really.
Not really.
Is it no?
You sound very muffled.
Now, perhaps now it's
Sounds
fine.
good. Okay.
Now it's a bit better.
Oh, it's better now. Perfect.
Mhm.
I guess has something to do with the mic. Sorry, the other thing, earplugs probably. My question to Ms. Tribuna would be regarding the social dilemma of biohacking as such. Now, perhaps the gene modification or physical or mental enhancements of the human system, what we have, is quite thrilling. However, what I see in that perspective is, given all the positivities, that's perfect in every sense, especially for the people left behind. But then again, Ms. Tribuna again referred to not dangerous maybe, but a concerning topic regarding the ones who were left behind might still be left behind regardless of what is happening in the technological advancements. Now, what is the first thing? You know, as in today, as it was 300 years ago, the one who can pay for it gets it. Now, if we do not, perhaps not something to do with regulation, but nevertheless change that social dilemma of what we are having, then we would be left behind with, you know, people with, that's a bit caricaturized format, so to say, but, you know, you see what I'm telling, you know, people with advanced capabilities against the people who were left behind, as Janke also said in the employment perspective, or, you know, the footprint perspective. So given that, I mean, that's not a question, by the way, it's just a, you know, commentary, try to be commentary. You know, what I would take as from the legislation perspective is we still have the same social problem, which is, you know, there would be ones left behind during the biological enhancement process or evolution, revolution, what you would like to call. There must be some special provisions specifically to such matters that would enhance the ones who were left behind. You know, that could be even taxation. Sadly, I didn't take the tax. My specialization is on IP and competition law. But, you know, even in the public law would be perhaps better in that sense than, you know, corporate law or private law, excluding, of course, the civil law, you know, the person's law. So my question would be, you know, would there be any special regulations that you would like to comment on?
Thank you for your question. Actually, that's a really good one. First of all, I would like to mention that actually that is exactly one of the threats that was mentioned on the International Summit on genetic modifications, because actually that's completely true. Because once we have this, we decide to use genetic modification as a mean of human enhancement and not only like medical therapeutic treatment. So we will face the question of social hierarchy and discrimination, right? And furthermore, actually, that's one of the barriers which do not allow us to use this technology as a human enhancement for the moment, because for the moment we don't have these ethical and legal standards to apply. That's the first thing that I would like to highlight. And second one, actually, your question made me think about the Pataka movie. Have you saw it? Yeah, actually. In that movie, the society was segregated for two groups. So modified, like plucked, and natural human beings. So without any enhancements, modifications, etc. And actually, as it was in the movie, there were some professions that were only pre-chosen for these plucked people, and these professions were not available for the natural ones. And actually, that's the problem that you have mentioned. And unfortunately, in my opinion, and some scientists agree on it, that once the therapeutic treatment and genetic modifications as a healthcare mean is also became a reality. So inevitably, it will be used as a human enhancement mean. But I hope till that time we're gonna elaborate some legal and ethical framework to to mild up this discrimination. But for the moment, I have no idea how it's gonna possible, how it's gonna be possible. But I really hope that the human enhancement will be or widely available, so everyone can use it. And yes, so in that case, as it will be like very free access, so it will not make the problem of social discrimination more complicated. And actually, while setting up the ethical and legal framework of this human enhancement, we shall use our core principle of human dignity, which shall always prevail. And as everyone has the human dignity, so we shall base on this principle while setting up the new rules.
My dear friends and global legal hacker community and all the guests that joined. It's 10 p.m. in Moscow, 8 p.m. in Germany. We need certainly to let Christopher let go now, as he told me he needs to go on time. We can, if you wish, and if there are still more people who wants to share something, we can still continue a few minutes. But let me thank you at that moment, Christopher, for attending that session, for saying yes to the proposal to share and to let us be part of your knowledge and your vision and your thoughts. For me, it was personally very interesting, and I'm grateful to you that you accepted. Same for Violetta, of course. Interesting read. Really, this is something that is so much actual today, and we need to know more about this. So I hope this was only the beginning, and we can continue in either that format or other format, the discussion soon. There's another very interesting question in the chat to you, Christopher. I'm not sure you're typing already or answering. Maybe we continue on another note. Holger, is there anything you would like at the end to say, or maybe someone else in the room? Otherwise, I think
I just want to encourage really anybody to watch Gattaca, what Violetta mentioned, a very good movie, and gives you a lot of insights. It's 15 or 20 years old, but it's still very valid today. Well, and thank you from my side as well to Christopher and Violetta for participating. It was very interesting. I get the impression we could do it for another 5 hours, or make a series of online events out of this topic, biohacking, transhumanism, and everything in that direction. So hopefully that this will not be the last time we met. Online, offline, in this live, and I would be happy to continue this discussion. So thank you, everybody. I was very, very pleasantly surprised by the very vivid discussion. That's very, very encouraging, because that's the first time we did an international event, and you're very, very much welcome to the forthcoming events. There will be one in a couple of weeks on deepfakes. Also very interesting topic.
Yes, so subscribe to our YouTube channel, subscribe to our Telegram channel, Moscow Legal Hackers, and take part in the discussion. A lot of it is in Russian, but you just join in, and as we did today, I think it's good proof that we are truly an international global community, and it's great to have this knowledge, these people, and such nice speakers as Violetta and Christopher joining us. Thank you so much again for your time and your knowledge. It was really amazing. Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.